He's not a bat, he's a man who fights crime. And we're gonna watch him fight for a minute at a time. With John and Niall and a guest who doesn't rhyme. It's Bat Minute!
Attention, citizens of fair Gotham. Welcome to Bat Minute of the Phantasm, the show that normally has a very exciting introduction, but I didn't write one. And you know what? I'm honest. I'm not going to pause it and go and write one. I'm honest. I'm real with you listeners. I didn't write one, and that's on me. I'm one of your hosts, John Parker.
And here with a little pick-me-up, it's me, Niall McGowan, astounded that you didn't use the one line that's in the minutes for your thing, John. Because I was panicking. I was like, what the hell am I going to say? Clearly, John's going to use the pick-me-up line.
Well, I'll tell you something. That is exactly what I was planning to do when I made the notes. And either I didn't save or I just forgot. I was going to make a joke about the pick-me-up. So we're on the same wavelength. That means we're good podcasters.
Yeah, well, let's hope so.
Well, we
5 seasons in.
We are joined by someone else who's very good. Better than us, in fact. We are joined by author of the book Junk Film, in fact, Katharine Coldiron.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thank you for joining us.
I think I'm so gutted, though, Katharine. I've want to come across you this season when we're in the middle of a pretty good film. After we spent like an entire year talking about Batman and Robin. And it's like, that would have been prime real estate for you. Although I don't know, like, what is your opinion of Batman? Because you're coming in with, I know Junk Film is made up of a series of essays that you've written about things like Plan 9 from Outer Space and things like that. Do you have a specific kind of like definition of junk film? Would you call Batman and Robin a junk film? Or would you like, no, it's too like competently made to be that? Or what would you say?
Oh, that's a can of worms. So there's a big difference between kind of bottom of the line B movies that are made by individuals with $50 and a camcorder and big budget movies that suck a lot.
Yeah.
And I talk about both kinds. And of course, there's lots of stuff in the middle. And I think Batman and Robin is a bad movie, but I think that it's also delightfully campy and it's never tiresome to watch as opposed to some, I mean, you might disagree because you've gone through it minute by minute, but it's entertaining at least as opposed to movies that are deadly because nothing happens.
Yeah. Well, although our experience was like, it was actually better to go through it minute by minute because when you got to digest everything just in little snippets, it was like, this is great. It's a painless, it's a painless project. Whereas I do find when you watch it normally, it's great for like the first 30 minutes and all its campness. And then there's a bit of a stretch where it's a bit like, oh God, no. And then it kind of perks up again. But yeah, going through it, like with coming in, bringing in people like yourselves to talk about it. It was like a really, really fun season.
The minute starts with Andrea's biggest fan and it ends with Andrea's other biggest fan.
I'll always do ask Katharine before going into this movie going into the minute with the guests because Master Phantasm, very, very acclaimed film, but actually not a lot of people have seen it. Like loads of people have seen it, but it's not as like, you know, it's not like going to someone The Dark Knight. Like everyone's seen that, but you know, a lot of people, like hardcore Batman people have seen this, but some of the general public have not. Like where do you lie with this? Like what angle are you coming at this film from?
Well, I really wish that I could have transplanted my husband's brain into me for this podcast because he has extremely sophisticated and well-informed opinions about Batman. And I have some opinions. And this movie, I know that I have seen before I watched it, you know, in order to come on this podcast, but I cannot remember the circumstances of seeing it. I'm sure I saw it with him. I doubt I saw it when I was a kid myself. But part of the reason that I know I've seen it is because we very commonly watch the animated DC movies and the animated Batman movies before we'll watch the live action ones. So I know that this was a part of my mental collection. I just don't know what my opinion was of it. I think The Killing Joke kind of like kicked any of my memories of this movie out and replaced it.
But we are back here in the minute as the wind is raging, courtesy of the giant fan that Joker jokingly called her biggest fan last time. And he immediately comes out with another little quip.
The Joker? A quip? No.
It's very unheard of, isn't it? This is out of character completely.
He's never been so dour and serious the whole time.
Well, you'd think that with some internet bros.
Well, here's the question. Do you think it's a deliberate joke on the filmmaker's part that the Phantasm is nearly killed by a giant fan?
I never once thought of that.
No,
and also
not at all.
That a character whose whole thing is smoke and coming in and blowing smoke and filling things up with smoke is getting killed by a giant fan. Is like,
see, this is verging on something that I wanted to talk about, which is that I feel like this is silly even for Batman and even for the Joker. Like it's straight out of a 40s serial to have a giant fan. Like, come on. I feel like this is something. It reminded me of the bit in Galaxy Quest where Sigourney Weaver is like, why is this here? Why is this like mashing? There's no reason to have a fan so powerful that it could suck a human being into it at all in the world ever.
Especially in a theme park.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you like that's one of the questions is like, so what is this thing? Why do they have? And I know they had a thing about like they showed you earlier in the movie like, you know, the prototype Batmobile, and at one point it had like a sign next to it going like turbine power or something.
Yeah.
Is this supposed to be a giant turbine that they made to go like, this is going to be inside the car, so this is what it looks like? And it's just this horrific monstrosity of a fan comes out of nowhere.
I mean, I think it's the filmmakers and the screenwriters thinking, okay, well, we have to have some kind of a threat that the Joker can wield against Andrea. And so
they're going Phantasm. What if it was a giant fan?
You're stretching. But this, right, I like it when it's separated from the rest of the movie. Like, as you say, if it was a 40s kind of serial thing, fine. Yeah, cool. But with the rest of the movie, this is almost like a crazy step too far for me.
Yes, exactly. It's not in line with the tone of the rest of the movie.
No. It's very much in because we did a couple of years ago a table read of the original like 1984 script for Batman, which is drastically different from the movie that Tim Burton ended up making, and the entire climax of that takes place on a giant typewriter, and it's weird because it's really it's such a bizarre shift in tone though, because it's like it's all goofy fun and people jumping around typewriter keys and like, you know, Silver St. Cloud's been held hostage and all this sort of stuff. And then at one point, like, Rupert Thorne gets crushed to death inside the gears. And it's like, whoa, that's insanely violent. It's like, what the hell? I thought we were having, like, 1960s good times. And it was like, no, this typewriter will fucking kill you. Like, okay. But this feels like they're kind of hearkening to that. But, like, we'll not make it too silly, like a giant typewriter. But we'll make it, you know, like a giant fan will be.
Well, but a giant typewriter would be closer to the Joker's type of threats, which are, you know, often absurd.
Yeah.
But this is absurd in a lazier way than the Joker's threats usually are. And so I feel like, you know, the woman with the knife is a great piece of Joker comedy. The mannequin, you know, the robot with the knife.
Yes, I love it.
Whereas this is just very unimaginative as far as Joker threats.
My headcanon is like this is why the world of tomorrow, like why the theme park got shut down.
Did everyone get sucked into the fan and
they brought in this
wildly
fan
unsafe.
And like,
yeah,
like 5
There's
people
a class
got
action
killed.
lawsuit against this fan.
Diced
That's
some
so
children.
funny.
And then there's like, oh, just shut down the park. Like, should we dismantle the fan? Oh no, just leave it. No one's gonna touch it.
Yeah, and it's in perfect working order. Yeah, great. No, I think the Joker must have souped this up, right? Come on.
Yeah. It does seem to be very techie. Like he has, you know, he's done things. Well, you have to presume he rewired Hazel and stuff, the robot, to be a killer. Like, unless that was also a thing that was wrong with the world of tomorrow. It's like, yeah, the domestic robot started stabbing people, and the fan went crazy. It was a bit like maybe what actually happened with the. I'm assuming you've seen the animated series that this is spun off from, Katharine.
Actually, I have not.
No? Oh wow! Oh, well, you should treat yourself. It's really, really good.
Oh yes, no, I'm aware of its reputation, and I'm not disdaining it. I just haven't seen it.
But there is an episode like a two-parter. I think it even recurs like later on. They might bring the character back, but there is an artificial intelligence called Hardak. That just it's just Skynet. Basically, it's the same concept as Skynet. And that'd be great if they just like, you could headcanon into being like, they installed a primitive version of Hardak in the world of tomorrow, and it went crazy and started killing people with giant fans and killer robots, and that prototype Batmobile jumped up and started running over people or something. And then they sucked the Hardak out, and then they got rid of it, and then they just left everything lying, and we're just like, okay, well, just nobody everyone agreed just not to go into that area of Gotham anymore. Although the thing is, though, because the only actors really featuring in this minute is, of course, you get Mark Hamill gets one line, but it's like, how about a little pick-me-up? Which is like, what would you someone says a pick-me-up to you? Like, in my mind, I don't know if it's been perverted by people saying it in a joking way to refer to drugs when you're at a party and calling a little bump a pick-me-up, or if a pick-me-up means something else entirely. But in my mind, that's like, it's supposed to be like a drug thing.
Well, no. To me, it's just anything that lifts your spirits. So a drug could.
I believe that the phrase probably came out of marketing for housewives in the 1950s to, so that they would buy Vivarin and caffeine and possibly alcohol. Just the sense of, I think of it as a cocktail, a pick-me-up, which is dumb because alcohol is a depressant, but that's the first thing that I think it's going to be.
Yeah.
That's the mastery of marketing, is to sell you a thing, convincing you it's one thing, when in actual fact it's a completely different thing. It's like,
it does do that to me, and I don't know if it's in my head. If I have a drink, I get a lot more energetic, but that could be because then I'm less likely to be like anxious or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I just find the depressant part comes like the next day.
Yeah, later on.
yeah. And that's a whole other kettle of fish. But no, with you a bit on, Katharine, Mark Hamill, Dana Delaney here, both people who have been in their share of junk films, for lack of a better word. Particularly Mark Hamill, because he has this like, Mark Hamill is a weird career in that he has 358 acting credits to his name. Most of that now comes post being the Joker, because people are like, holy Christ, he's really good at voice acting. We should hire him for everything now. And so you could do like 5 parts in a day if you wanted to, because that's the way voice acting works. But of course, I know you're a Star Wars fan, Katharine, but I
am.
You must know, of course, about the giant dip of his career between 1983 and been cast as the Joker. Because, he has a long period where everything he's starring in is complete dreck. But it's the type of dreck that I love, because it's just like, it's all cheesy sci-fi nonsense, and they've all got all the promotional things for it are Mark Hamill of the Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah, you got to put that in brackets there.
To try to lend it a bit of legitimacy. So the same time he's out starring in like Time Runner. He's then on QVC flogging Star Wars merch because this is what he has to do now and stuff like that. But just what we had a little nosy through. Have you nosed in your research of junk film, Katharine? Have you looked into the nadir of Mark Hamill's career, or have you steered clear of his nadir of his career?
Well, I know he was in a movie called Slipstream that I picked up from one of those bins where they have, DVDs for $1.99 or whatever. And I tried really hard to get through that one and couldn't, but that was years ago.
Yeah.
He was in a TV movie that was done by Riff Tracks that I saw fairly recently, that was just basically a copy of The Heavenly Kid, which was itself a TV movie. And like, if you imagine a copy of it's rough. But he, in the first part of the movie, all of the actors are in their 40s and they're all playing teenagers because the movie jumps forward in time. So, but it's not good. I mean, his forearms are clearly not those of a teenager. It's very off-putting. But something I love about Mark Hamill is that he seems to have taken his life in stride. And, when he has great success and when he has great failure, it seems like he's got a sense of humor about it all at this point. And that's not true for everybody who's a household name. So I'm a fan.
Yeah. It's a weird ability, as well. I think it's entirely the facial hair. It was, because now you can't deny the fact that he's just an old man now. But yeah, in that period of the early 90s, he had a thing where he could go from looking quite old to really, really young in the blink of an eye just by having a beard.
That's power.
Yeah. So Slipstream that's a weird one, because that's one where he's like a bounty hunter who goes back through time. Because the future has been taken over by wind.
By wind?
Yeah, I think it's climate disasters have now made it way too windy in the future.
People are all, the vehicles that they're in are all like gliders. It's very silly. And it's also one of those movies that if it had landed in the hands of competent writers or directors, it might have actually been interesting. But because it didn't.
I can see that because I'm sold on it already. This sounds great.
Yeah, but so he goes, that's in 89, and he shows up and he looks grizzled. It's only, 6 years after Return of the Jedi, but he looks like he's about 40, and he's got this beard, and he's got the hair slicked back, and he's playing a tough guy, and it's kind of that's not the Mark Hamill I'm used to. But yeah, it's him, shockingly, it's Bill Paxton's in it too.
The cast is actually good.
Yeah, you're a bit Paxton, Hamill I get, but what are you doing here, man? This is, you're in the prime of your career right here. But
a job's a job.
Yeah, Muldoon from Jurassic Park's also in it there too.
Hey,
everybody's got to feed their kids. I mean, I remember reading one time that Donald Pleasance, I think, has 12 children, and that explains a lot to me. You know, he has said, I took all of the jobs that I possibly could because I got to feed my kids. Yeah. And I stopped looking down on actors for taking what they take after that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, 100%, because you can't always, unless you're I don't know, Tom Cruise, you can't always just do a passion project. Yeah. People just, sometimes a role might come along and you go, oh, okay, how long do you need me for? 2 weeks? Yeah, okay, cool, let's just do it. Whatever.
Yeah, to be fair to Donald Pleasance, a lot more of his lines from Halloween now, I would quote, are all from the latter half of the series as well. So, because he's a man didn't mind hamming it up in those movies.
Exactly.
And it was just, I think it was Halloween 6, his last movie too. He's just to the bitter end. But yeah, so you go from Slipstream, and then the next year he's in a thing, Mark Hamill, Midnight Ride, which is just The Hitcher, but it's a little bit different. But it's basically a woman's fleeing from her abusive husband, picks up a hitchhiker, Mark Hamill. But the thing is, he shaved the beard. This is a year later. And he looks like he's about 16 in it. And it's weird. He's playing proper. And it's so strange. I've only watched the trailer, but it's him. They're doing things she's running away from him and stuff, gets on a bus, and then the bus is driving, and the bus driver turns around, and it's Mark Hamill in the bus driver's hat and stuff. And it's weird him playing a crazy serial killer, but it's pre-Joker. So he's not kind of doing it, right? He still seems too innocent and too, happy-go-lucky and stuff. And it feels very much he's not a sinister presence, this is Luke Skywalker. Until, a mere 2 years later, they're oh, no, now he's a sinister presence.
The Mark Hamill's an interesting case because he's an actor who I think didn't have a niche and tried really hard to find one. At first it was he was a teen beat type of figure. And then he did all of these, fairly successful space movies. And then after that, what do? Are you a hero? Well, he doesn't really look like a leading man, and he doesn't necessarily have the chops to be a versatile character actor, and he's too big a face to be a small character actor. Yeah. And so what do you do with him? How do you cast him? And I suspect that now he would probably slip pretty easily into being villains on television and in streaming. But back then, you didn't take the hero of the biggest film franchise of all time and stick him into villain roles. Like, it's just not what you did.
Yeah.
So I understand completely that it might have been difficult for him to find his way. That's really hard. And that's something else that I think has gotten easier, especially because since Marvel franchises sort of took over Hollywood, recognizing someone as a very specific part is no longer seems like it's a hindrance to getting cast. I mean, you still have Daisy Ridley hasn't taken a whole lot of parts, but if you have the kind of success that Star Wars has, like, do you think you'll ever work again? I mean, maybe not, maybe so. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
So, but no one could have known that in 1977. Like, not a chance.
That's the thing. Mark Hamill walked, so people now could run.
Exactly. But while he was, even stumbling to walk himself, some of the things he came out with were like, you go through the list, and it's like a lot of these look like porn. There's one like Black Magic Woman. Which is the owner of a suburban art gallery searches for someone to perform an exorcism after a witch casts a spell on him. It just looks like a Red Shoe Diaries kind of like poster.
Maybe it was actually a little bit erotic. Who knows?
I'm sure it probably was. The main female lead was Apollonia from Purple Rain.
Amazing. Okay, we need to cover it now.
Yeah. The great thing about all these is they're all on YouTube.
Yes.
Like, it's that film where the people who own the copyright do not care. They're like, yes, you can go and watch Silk Degrees with Mark Hamill as an FBI agent, with Mark Singer from V looking after some lady who witnessed a murder or whatever, and do things get erotic? The poster suggests that it does. And
right, this is a mini-series in between seasons. We're doing this.
The many erotic adventures of Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
And I find out none of them are erotic. They're all just designed to entice people. And it's like, if you can't get them with the guy from Star Wars, you gotta get them by thinking that maybe he banged somebody.
I'll find it erotic.
Although Silk Degrees also stars Adrienne Barbeau, who was the voice of Catwoman.
Adrienne Barbeau is not the mark of quality. I'm sorry.
How dare you?
No.
I watched a lot of Skinamax. I know from Adrienne Barbeau.
She used to be married to John Carpenter, though. Going back to Donald Pleasance, doing the whole Halloween thing.
But everything's connected yet again.
Yeah, she was in one of my favorite really awful movies called Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death.
What a title!
Which also, believe it or not, stars Bill Maher and Shannon Tweed. Speaking of Skinamax, and it's a fun, really, really awful movie that I recommend people watch at least once.
One that he did star in around, it's actually the same year as this, and it also featured Stacy Keach, who is of course the voice of Carl Beaumont and the Phantasm. You might have seen it, Catherine. Body Bags.
Ooh.
No,
it's
not on my list.
It might be too good, is the thing. Maybe that's the problem. It's a John Carpenter movie. It's one of the kind of Tales from the Crypt things where his concept was like, I'm trying to bring back that kind of like Twilight Zone-y type of thing. So here's a movie of vignettes, and John Carpenter himself hosts them. And he's a guy working in a morgue, and he's just really decrepit looking, and long, horrible hair, and he's coughing and spluttering, and et cetera.
So John Carpenter.
Exactly. And as it goes on, he pops up between stories doing a kind of crypt keeper kind of thing. And then at the end of the movie, you find out that he's actually one of the corpses in the place. It's come to life and stuff. And that's what he's been doing. Mark Hamill has a pretty sizable. He's the main part in one of the sections where he gets his eye taken out during a car crash, and then replaced by the eye of a serial killer.
God, it's one of these. Okay,
yeah, that's exactly what you think. Like over the course of it, it's like his personality starts to change, and he gets very violent.
He starts becoming the killer. Okay,
yeah. And he's married to Twiggy in it.
Oh.
This British pop star Twiggy is Mark Hamill's wife in it. And he's got a mustache, and it's very like, Mark Hamill with a mustache? What the hell is it? Like, it's just towards the end, obviously he goes crazy and tries to kill her. And it's basically, it's the Simpsons did it. The Simpsons did it later, I guess.
They did.
With the hairpiece.
Yeah, it's Snake's hairpiece going on Homer turning into a killer. Like, that's the whole plot. But Stacy Keach, speaking of hair, though, his part's even more baffling, because he's a really vain guy who's going bald, and he's really, really obsessed with not losing his hair. So he goes to a hair clinic. I
relate. Okay.
And the hair clinic is run by one David Warner, the voice of Ra's al Ghul. And his nurse is Debbie Harry.
What?
Yeah. Debbie Harry in virtually silent role. She's just, the whole time, you're like, that's Debbie Harry. Like, why is she just standing by David Warner?
If you can get Debbie Harry in your movie for 2 minutes, you'd do it.
Yeah. But then, like, David Warner's like, oh, yes, of course I can give you a hair transplant and, change your life. Gives him the hair transplant, much like The Simpsons. It's like the Moxonil. And Stacy Keach gets, like, a massive, amazing mane of hair. Goes out shagging all around him, having a great time. And then he starts to notice that, like, he's coughing loads, and he notices that in the back of his throat, a hair is growing on, like, his tonsils.
Ooh.
And then when he tries to pluck it out, the hair, like, screams and retracts.
What?
And then as it goes on, it turns out that the hair is alive. And that Debbie Harry and David Warner are aliens.
Oh, whoa, okay, this is cool now.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Their plan is to take over the world through humanity's vanity.
through hairy tonsils. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, if playing on humanity's vanity, not the worst plan I've ever heard of for taking over the world.
The thing is, because he's playing Ra's al Ghul the same year he would have been playing Ra's al Ghul in Batman the Animated Series, David Warner. It's kind of like, I wouldn't put it past the League of Shadows to be like, yes, detective, we are taking over the world through vanity this time, and we will destroy the human race and replace it with something even better. Yeah. Hair people.
That might have been around the same time he was an evil Cardassian in Next Generation.
Could have been, yeah. He just hopped from, like, species to species in Star Trek, though, David Warner. He's like... but then to spin over to the other side, the other actor we have here. Were you a fan of Sex and the City, Katharine? Was that ever on your... Would you partake in that?
I did not.
Because one thing I found out, though, about Dana Delaney is that she was apparently offered the role of Carrie Bradshaw before Sarah Jessica Parker.
What a world.
And she turned it down because of her affiliation with a couple of junk films. The one you might well have heard of, Exit to Eden.
No.
Oh, it's again on YouTube because no one cares. They're happy to let it go, and it's a baffling. I tried watching it, couldn't make it through it. It was awful. It's based on an Anne Rice book, but it's about a guy who accidentally photographs a murderer, and then flees to like an S&M island. Like a holiday resort for people.
I was going to say, what the hell is an S&M island? But okay, yeah, I get what you mean.
It's a resort for people into S&M. So then they send two cops, after to go undercover, Dan Aykroyd and Rosie O'Donnell. And so you get a lot of Rosie O'Donnell in leather corsets whipping people, and Ben Rosie O'Donnell going, I don't even know what I'm doing here. And
I'm no longer listening.
Dan Aykroyd, mustachio Dan Aykroyd, also in leather chaps and with the hat, the Marlon Brando biker hat.
Okay.
And this them been like, isn't this weird that people are into kinky stuff? Wah, 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 wah. Directed by Gary Marshall, which is again, it's fresh off Pretty Woman. It's like, holy moly!
This was the follow-up.
Yeah, the follow-up to Pretty Woman was this. And yeah, it has Dana Delaney. The big selling point of the movie, because it was the early 90s, is like, it's the lady from China Beach, and she has a full frontal scene. And that seems any coverage of it, all you'll hear about is people going, it's god awful, but Dana Delaney does get naked in it. And it's a bit like, that stands to 2023, apparently.
that's all people remember.
Yeah, that's it.
Jesus Christ.
Again, I sat through, I couldn't even make it to the nude scene. It was just like, oh my god, this is garbage. Absolute garbage. But she did that, and then something called Live Nude Girls, which was another sort of sex romp. Was actually had Kim Cattrall in it as well, weirdly enough.
Everything's connected yet again.
Yeah, but because of those two films doing, like, Exit to Eden has a 5% on Rotten Tomatoes currently. That
sounds a little high, honestly.
Well, if you want to, you can go and check it out on YouTube. Maybe come back and see, like, no, this should be lower or higher. Maybe it's a chapter. Maybe it's an essay waiting to happen.
To me, the worst kind of score you can get on there is like 20 to 40. Because that's like, I'm not going to watch your movie. If it's really, really low or really high, then I'll watch it. I'd rather your movie had 5%. Sometimes
too, you get people just aren't. There's not many people reviewing it. So I remember I went on to talk about Vibes, the Jeff Goldblum Cyndi Lauper movie. I think that had like a 2% or something. And I was like, this movie's great. Like, why do people hate it so much? And I was like, this was genuinely really fun. It's got Jeff Goldblum and Cyndi Lauper as a duo.
It could be a terrible plot, and I don't care. It's got them two.
It was just kind of an Indiana Jones plot. But it was just that they were both. Have you seen it, Catherine? Do you know Vibes?
I have seen it.
Hey.
Were you the one of the reviewers giving it the 2% on there?
Oh, I'm not Rotten Tomatoes approved.
Oh. But what did you think of it, though? Were you positive or not so much?
Oh, let's talk about Batman.
You didn't vibe with it. I'll take that.
So I wondered, I know that y'all have covered most of the movie at this point, but I was wondering what you have to say about the thing that struck me about this movie was how weirdly paced it was and how much it felt like two different movies in the first half and the second half. And I don't disagree that it's a good movie and especially a good Batman movie, but I was so... I found that really annoying and troubling, and I couldn't really get past it.
Yeah.
It's come up a few times, actually. Some people can just live with it, and then other people can't. It definitely feels like different things bolted together, and I'm surprised that doesn't come up as a criticism more. I
think that's exactly what it was, though, because they just got the writers of the TV show who were in the middle of writing the show and said, we're making a movie. You do these flashback scenes. You write the Joker scenes. You go and write this, and then we'll paste that together. And that's why it is very just like, oh, this is a bunch of stuff. It's all good stuff, but you just kind of slotted a couple of things together. And you're like, it's a movie. And it's all TV writers. So it could be that they're so like, well, we know how to write 22-minute episodes.
I felt that they spent a good amount of time doing atmosphere in the beginning, and that was I really enjoyed that. I think that was part of the reason that when I sat down in the first 10 minutes, I was like, okay, this feels like an actual Batman movie as opposed to the Nolan movies, which are doing something very special, but it's not doesn't necessarily feel like Batman to me all the way. Yeah. And Tim Burton's Batman, which is very specific vision. This, I'm like, okay, this is correct. Yeah. Like you have created the platonic ideal of a Batman movie. But they spent all this time with empty rooms and cities and no dialogue in the first 30 minutes or so. And then in the back half, it's just like bang, 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 bang. So many different things happening. And I don't think that makes it a coherent film. And you're right. It is stitched together and the whole year is cut off production time. And I know that makes it basically impossible to make a good movie.
Yeah.
But I also wonder why it's that highly regarded when it has these flaws that are so obvious.
I think it might be, though. People they love these versions of the characters. They love the vibes of it. They just love the atmosphere and the actual depth of story and stuff. Particularly in you're coming from a time where Batman movies were never really focused on Batman. It was always Tim Burton was all about the Joker and the Penguin and Catwoman. That was his interest. To then have a thing here's like a proper story where you're really delving in deep to the character and Kevin Conroy's giving it his all. And you got the best version of the Joker popping up. Again, pops up very abruptly, like 45 minutes in.
Well, that's part of what feels like a bolted together movie, isn't it? We've talked about that a few times. The Joker being there is a bit strange to begin with.
Yeah. It just feels like but then you could also turn around and be like, isn't that kind of the Joker's thing, though, where everything's going fine, and then all of a sudden he disappears, and you're like, oh, Christ, I didn't think he was going to show up.
Yeah.
It's but yeah, so it is good. It's a good question because it still is so very well regarded. But like this, particularly doing this show, we can't help but see the the inherent flaws to it, where it's just like, yeah, I mean, they're gonna buff that a little bit.
That comes out so well in this minute, in my opinion, because the peril that Andy is in is so cliched. And the way that the peril is gotten out of is even more cliched. And that's not the movie that I was watching for the first part of this movie. And so it's kind of disappointing. And I mean, do we know how Bruce knows that she's there? Why the hell does she need to be rescued like a damsel in distress when she's like, it's just all very...
That does stick him across a little bit, that like they had her as like, oh, it's, and this is coming at a time too where 93 is like, there's a real prime time of killer women in cinema. It was going through a real phase, because you had like Fatal Attraction.
Well, I mean, it was going through an erotic thriller phase. That's...
We kind of touched on it a little bit with like Poison Ivy last season, because it's like, well, it's as if she's like, at the tail end of like the dangerous film, sexy lady kind of thing.
Well, and we covered a movie called Poison Ivy, which was similar. It was an erotic thriller, but it was about a secret evil person.
But no, even around the time, because you have like Misery, you got Serial Moms out the next year.
Oh God, I love that.
Yeah, because of Fatal Attraction, Basic Instinct, even like The Last Seduction, that kind of thing was all coming out around.
No, I just think the question for me is not so much what was going on in 1993 as what made them think that putting her in front of a giant rotating fan and then having Batman come in to rescue her on his white horse is like a reasonable way to continue this movie. And like, I know they were under extraordinary pressure, but this is rough. Like this is a difficult moment for me to laud.
It's been strange for me ever since she removed the mask and cloak and revealed herself. I think I've talked about this in a previous minute. It's almost like she then lost all of her power.
Yeah.
Which is, what's that saying? That's a strange message, really. Like, oh, now you know it's a woman. She's not strong anymore.
That's exactly correct. Yes.
Like Leia taking off the Bosch mask and just leaping into the gold bikini kind of thing. Like, well, she was a badass before. Now, well, I guess to be fair though, she does strangle Jabba the Hutt to death, so that's neither here nor there.
That's the thing. I mean, I do always defend that bit because I know a lot of people go, "Oh, it's disgusting. She's in the bikini and stuff." And it's like, I think it's supposed to be.
It is. She's being subjugated by this nasty gangster. Like that's the whole point.
And she comes out on top using her actual chains of oppression to kill him, which is like, that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, I mean, like there's a difference between that and like if there had been these creepy, loving shots like traveling up her body in the gold bikini, that would be a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But the look on her face is obviously, this is humiliating. And it feels like, it's not the same thing at all, but it does feel like as soon as Andy is revealed to be Andy, like she's completely different body, 100% different. She's not on whatever like rotating skateboard she was on to be the Phantasm. And she just turns into a regular person again.
Yeah.
And
it's weird.
Yeah, it's not unexpected.
Well, unfortunately.
Well, let's say there's something here as well. There's like an action beat of like, you can't have the climax of the movie without Batman showing up and saving the day somehow.
Certainly, that's true, and I get that completely. I object to the way that they set it up.
Totally, yeah.
And
you could take this out of the movie and it wouldn't do any harm. I think really, you just make a little edit. This the Joker ran away and then Batman shows up. There you go. You don't need this whole little section, I guess.
Although I'm against it as well. I've been racking my brain trying to think what the logic is, and I'm gonna go with their thought process might have been like she's been taking out gangsters, but the Joker is a step too far. Like that's another world. That's he's on another planet. Villain.
Yeah,
maybe that's what they're trying to say. Like she can kill these very dangerous gangsters, but this is unique.
My opinion about that is that the Joker has always been unpredictable, and that's part of his danger. Is you cannot guess what he's going to do next, and gangsters are nothing if not predictable.
Yeah.
So I think she can take them out because they're citizens, and he is just a big question mark. Not the Riddler, but.
You never know when he just has a giant fan lying around. It's
exactly.
Yes. I mean, in that way, the giant fan is actually appropriate because it's like, where the hell did you get that? And no one knows because he's the Joker.
See, we're coming around to it. Listen, internet, the nuance, discussion, conversation. That's what this is.
Here's the thing, though, in talking about Return of the Jedi and women's attire. So we brought this up in a minute earlier this week. I just want to get your reaction because I want to see if anyone else would agree with me. This thing Andy's wearing here, black outfit, one black glove, one ungloved hand. She's fighting Mark Hamill. Is there any chance that that's a reference to the Return of the Jedi? Like, is that what they go? Oh, God damn it! I was hoping somebody would be on my side with that.
I like it, but I don't think it is.
No. But yeah. So the minute does end. Of course, they have the bat cycle. Batman doing a little wheelie up there into midair.
I do love how thoroughly he's willing to sacrifice all of his toys. Like he will destroy anything he owns. And of course it goes along because he's a billionaire. It's fine. You can just make another one. But I just
also noted too that in the series, Robin uses that bike all the time. So it could be he's like, yeah, I took Dick's bike. But I just hope he doesn't ask about it when he comes home or whatever.
Well, I do think he does view them almost as one-use items, doesn't he? Like, well, this is probably going to get destroyed, but I'm rich enough, as you say there, to just get another one.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the way that Bond, I think, thinks of his toys. Is like when he gets all the stuff from Q, he's only going to use this for this one movie, and you're never going to see that car again. And I don't love that, frankly. But you're wasting Her Majesty's money.
Like in a later movie, he could be in a similar situation where you're like, I know, he's got one of those, I don't know, watches with razor wire in. He can get out of this. It's like, oh no, he hasn't got that this time for some reason.
They should do that in the movie, though. It's in a life or death situation, and he brings out a gadget from the previous film. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I had that the whole time, yeah. they gave it to me. I think it's part and parcel of the mission and stuff. Well, it was a couple of missions ago, but of course I hung on to it. Why wouldn't I keep this thing here?
I think we're meant to believe after the mission's done, he has to go and hand it all back into Q.
That's probably right. Yeah.
And he gets assigned what he needs for the mission, even though they couldn't possibly know that.
See, but that's what this movie could have used a little more of that. Like that's basic screenwriting 101 is set up something and then knock it down. Like you set up something in the first act and you knock it down in the third act. So if you had some setup where the Joker takes possession of this giant fan somewhere in the first 15 minutes of the movie, like what is he going to do with that? Who cares? And then it comes back again in the last half. Or if Batman is designing a fan jamming device and then he uses it. And like, I don't know why either of these things would ever happen, but the setup and knockdown is a super useful method of writing a screenplay. And this screenplay has like almost none of it.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think that's interesting.
Because one of the things we only found out from doing it minute by minute is that the thing he investigates at the beginning, like the thing left on the glass, and he goes in and he's like, oh, it's a high molecular chain polymer, adaptogenic, of course, and all that. And so you assume, it's the smoke he's talking about. And I guess at the time, Claire was like, no, it's the padding on the Phantasm suit, because she looked into it and she's like, it will have to be that. The only thing that makes sense is that it's the padding on the suit.
And but they didn't tell us.
Yeah, they should tell us what the heck
that stuff is.
Yeah, they should have a thing then when she takes off the mask and her whole body form changes. Say it's linked to that, and that's why it's Batman figured out as well. Like, this polymer can it can change shape and size or something like that. And so that's how he goes like, maybe the Phantasm isn't a 6 foot burly guy. It could be anybody kind of thing. So.
Perfect example. That's exactly what should have happened. And instead, it does not.
No.
So basically, we're better writers. We could have made a better Batman than this highly acclaimed masterpiece.
I mean, Monday morning quarterbacking is certainly fun. Yeah. But I also do feel that, and I can't overemphasize, and I felt the same way about Rise of Skywalker, like how messed up production must have been to cut an entire year off and then make your movie. Like, no, I can't do that. I physically cannot do that. And then they did it anyway. So I get it, but start with the script, cut corners elsewhere.
Yeah. But just a quick question though, Katharine, is that just out of curiosity, I'm always curious now, people coming to the movie with like relatively fresh eyes. Were you tricked by the Phantasm reveal? Were you shocked that it was Andrea Beaumont, or were you like the whole time like, no, it's clearly not going to be the dad. It's clearly going to be her.
I didn't think it was the dad, but I didn't know who it was. The fact that it was her was a surprise. But because there are actually a surprising number of characters in this movie, the number of gangsters is pretty large. I felt like it was pretty wide open who it could have been. And the fact that it could have been, just one of the lantern-jawed men around, because there were so many. And, the motivations for why they were killing off these gangsters certainly would have narrowed the field a little bit as to who it could be. But no, I did not expect it to be her. And in fact, I watched this minute before I watched the rest of the movie. And I'm watching the minute and I'm going, oh my God, poor Barbara. She's always in these terrible situations. And then Matt was like, that's the Phantasm, dummy. And I was like, oh God, I forgot that completely.
Well, even that though, because Bruce Timm gets a lot of stick for, like, people love his artwork, but he does have very, like, these are the body types and these are the designs, and everything's kind of a variation of the same one. So looking, seeing like, oh, it's Barbara Gordon. No, it's actually Andrea Beaumont. And then they recently had the 4K release of, like, they're bringing out this new version of it, and here's the new poster, and the comments we got in listeners gave were like, that looks like Poison Ivy. It's like, it does look like Poison Ivy.
It's, part of me is like, oh, shame on me for not recognizing that that's clearly not Barbara Gordon. And then I'm like, no, the women all look the same. The fact that she has red hair is why I thought it was Barbara.
But no, so when speaking of just animation in general, though, Katharine, we do always ask the guests, because BTAS was such a seminal cartoon for people of not just the generation, several generations of people since it's come out. We're asking the guests what their other favorite animated shows were from way back when.
When I was a really little kid, it was He-Man, like really small. And then as I got older, it was She-Ra and Gem and the Holograms.
Brilliant.
And then I remember when the Spielberg Warner's collaboration started and Animaniacs came around. I was like just a little bit too old to watch Animaniacs, but I did really like Freakazoid, and just like whatever was on in my late childhood, I would kind of watch. But in early childhood, it was really all about She-Ra and Gem.
Brilliant choices. All of those are great. Top tier.
Just want to make sure, though, which do you think is the best Gem theme tune? The original one or the second one?
No, this is a terrible question. The one that was used for most of the show, not the one Me and My Friends Are Gem Girls is a dumb song. Sorry.
Oh, that's the one I love.
I know it. I'm sorry.
I'm not wading into this debate. I think they're both fantastic. I'll sit on the fence.
We had a weird thing of happening in time because we hadn't booked her yet as a guest, but like earlier on the show, because we're going through like initially like, oh, this actor did something or other, and then so many people mentions of Freakazoid early on in the season because all the actors worked on Freakazoid, and then someone came up with.
I heard that.
And then someone came
I listened
up with,
to that episode, sorry.
Oh, well, thank you for the download. But I think at one point we ended up going on about like, oh yeah, Gem. Remember when they made that stupid Gem and the Holograms movie where it was like they didn't have any of their, it was they were like a little indie band that was all really low budget and stuff. And then later on we booked the director Chelsea Stardust to come on, and then I was like, she was the producer of that Gem and the Holograms movie that came out. It's like, hope she didn't listen to that. So.
I remember that movie. Yeah.
Oh.
No, I mean, part of the reason I remember it is because the woman who plays Jerrica was in Sharknado, and there's just no way that I'll ever forget any of the cast of Sharknado. If I see them again, I'll be like, I know what movie you were in.
How many of those are there now? Because I watched the first Sharknado, and then I watched one of the late ones because the drag queen Alaska was in it. They're the only two I've watched.
I believe there are 5, but there might be more.
There's probably about 15.
The thing is, like, I think me and John both have the beef with things like Sharknado, where it's like, well, this is deliberately bad.
Yeah.
Whereas the gold of a bad movie is like they were trying, and then they wanted to make a good thing, and they made something that was arguably better because of it's been terrible, and been something you can enjoy in that level. But when it's something like Sharknado, I don't know, I always kind of feel a bit like, well, it's not the real pure uncut stuff, but
it's still fun, but it just doesn't have that extra ingredient.
Yeah. I don't know if I've stepped into another vibe scenario here now where you're like, I don't want to comment on that.
No, I mean, anything that I say would just be repeating the stuff that I wrote in my book about this.
So you're just like, you want to find out what I think?
Go buy it.
Yeah, buy the damn book.
Because there's the first half of the book is all about Plan 9 from Outer Space. It's like 100 pages about Plan 9 from Outer Space. But one of the things that I do in there is delineate the different kinds of bad movies and what might have happened to make them like that. And one of the things that's always an element of bad movies is unintentional comedy.
Yes.
And if the comedy is intentional, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
So, Sharknado works on this weird way where it's multiple levels. There's a level where it's trying to be a good movie. There's a level where it's trying to be a bad movie. There's a level where it's unintentionally funny because they think that they're being funny, but they're actually being horrible.
Which makes it then funny.
Yeah. I mean, it goes in circles in this uncomfortable way, but ultimately what it is cynical. And cynical movies are never fun.
I mean, I was intrigued to hear more, but I guess we'll have to go buy the book.
Yeah,
you'll have to go buy the book.
Yeah.
And also, all of you go buy it.
Yeah, just also point out there too, in case anyone's going, why aren't they mentioning it? Of course, Plan 9 from Outer Space was directed by Ed Wood.
Yeah,
and Ed Wood was directed, there's a biopic made of him by Tim Burton, of course, directed. And we talked about at length during the first 2 seasons of this very show. So everything's connected.
Everything is connected. Excellent. Normally we would ask you, Katharine, to plug something, but you've plugged your book. So where can people find you online?
I am available at kcoldiron.com. That's kind of the central point for all other points to find me. I'm on Twitter at Ferrifrigida, FERRIFRIGIDA. And you can buy my book on Amazon.com or .co.uk, I believe. I'm not positive that the paperback is available in the UK, but I think it is. And if you buy the Kindle version, be aware that some of the footnotes are messed up. Has been reported to me. So if you want to buy the book directly from me, you can PayPal me $17 and I will send you a copy.
That sounds like the best way to me.
I'm on Instagram, but I hate it. I'm on Blue Sky, but I never use it. So Twitter's really the place to find me.
Check all of those out. Not X, Twitter. Check all of it out. And speak to us on Facebook at the Bat-Minute Listeners Cave, Twitter at Bat-Minute, Instagram the Bat-Minute, because some jerk got Bat-Minute first. And Threads, we're on that. We're not on Blue Sky yet. I'll make one. If we get an invite, I'm going to make one. I made a Mastodon. We don't use it, but I made one.
I think with Mask of the Phantasm, we'd have to be Red Sky. Like anytime it's to do with the Batman animated series, you gotta have a red sky.
Except the poster for this movie, ironically.
So, yeah.
But yes, speak to us on all of those. Check out our network, Sleepy Charlie Media, on Patreon and TeePublic for merchandise and bonus episodes and all kinds of other gubbins. We will be back next time with a minute 64 of Bat-Minute of the Phantasm. See you then, Batmites.
Next time, Andy, you got some splaining to do. The Dawn of Delirium's death trap is decimated, a dark detective connects the dots, and a red-haired wraith is put on the spot. But As a phantasmic confession leaves Bruce's heart in a sling, will it prompt our protagonists into the process of consciously uncoupling? We talk motivations and machinations come Monday, Batmites. Same Bat Pod, different Bat Minute.
Must have top, stiff it,